So hello guys, a very good afternoon. It is the 6th of August 2025. So this is just a very brief explainer of the current conflict or the current war that is ongoing in Sudan, the possible role that Kenya is playing, and what the US government might do to bring this conflict to an end. So this is how the conflict began, what happened, and where we stand today. So this is how the conflict began. So in 2018 and 2019, the people of Sudan poured into the streets and they decided to demonstrate against the overstayed leadership or the overstayed rule of one man known as Umar al-Bashir. So Umar al-Bashir came into power through a coup. He was a military general. He overthrew the government in 1989 and he became the president of Sudan from 1989 up until he was also removed through a coup in 2019. So this is what happened. When the people poured into the streets in 2018 and 2019, they were agitating for Umar al-Bashir's removal and, to elect a democratically elected civilian rule. That is what the people of Sudan wanted. So up until 2019, the people were demonstrating from 2018 up until 2019 when the Sudanese Armed Forces generals decided to remove Umar al-Bashir. So they also removed Umar al-Bashir through a coup. They overthrew him, they arrested him and decided to put him under, house arrest. So the civilians continued to agitate for civilian rule. They continued demonstrating. The demonstrations, got out of hand. A lot of civilians were killed. And when the military junta that overthrew Umar al-Bashir in 2019 realized that the civilians have decided to continue demonstrating, and the demonstrations were, getting out of hand, what they decided is that they decided to introduce a civilian part, a civilian kind of government, and they created a coalition. So they created a coalition between the ruling military junta and also civilians. So they decided to create a coalition between civilians and military junta. That is in 2019, when the demonstrations refused to stop, and they were actually getting out of hand, and a lot of people were killed and tortured. So once they created that coalition of civilian and military rule, the government continued ruling up until 2021. So in 2021, the military junta again decided to do away with the civilian coalition that they introduced, with the civilian side that they introduced into power. So they did away with them, and they decided to take total control now of the government, and it became a military kind of government. So what happened is that they ruled from 2021 again up until April 2023. So who were in power? The people who were in power were the military, the Sudanese Armed Forces, and a group known as RSF, the Rapid Support Forces. So the Rapid Support Forces was a paramilitary group that was born out of Janjaweed. So Janjaweed was a militia group that was committed atrocities and genocide in South Sudan, in Darfur area during the time the South Sudanese were agitating to cut off from the rest of Sudan and become an independent country. So Umar al-Bashir unleashed Janjaweed on the South Sudanese. They killed a lot of people and they were accused of crimes against humanity. So once the secession happened and South Sudan became an independent country, what happened is that the Janjaweed's name was changed to Rapid Support Forces, and they were created or changed into a paramilitary. So this is what happened. When Umar al-Bashir was removed in 2019, RSF was part of the government and was kind of a paramilitary group, and they was ruling together with the military generals that came into power after they removed Umar al-Bashir in 2019. So in 2023 April, these two groups, that is the Sudanese Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces, fought. Conflict erupted in between them, and they started fighting. So what happened is that the Sudan issue became a civil war. A lot of people were displaced, about 15 million according to the United Nations, and about 200,000 people were killed. So also RSF was accused of ethnic cleansing, rape, murder, torture, and displacement, crimes against humanity, basically, by the international community. So these two groups now, the Sudan Armed Forces and the Rapid Support Forces, have also both of them have been sanctioned by the US government for their crimes against humanity and what they're doing in Sudan. So even RSF has been accused of using hunger as a weapon of war. So this is what happened. When these two groups fought, they decided to occupy different parts of the country. So to the north, the Sudan's armed forces, rules up to the, east. So to the south and west, it, belongs, mostly it belongs to RSF. So RSF captured the gold-rich areas. So Sudan is known for exporting a lot of gold to the rest of the world. Now, what is happening is this: Kenya has been accused of interfering in this conflict. Reason being, they are accused of supporting RSF by providing weapons and also providing a safe haven for RSF and other militias to even come do a summit or a convention or a meeting and agree to create a parallel government. That is what happened early this year. And also Kenya has been accused of allowing RSF to smuggle gold, illegal gold that they've mined from the places they occupy in Sudan. So the US, according to the two newspapers this morning in Kenya, that is the Standard and the Nation, the US is investigating top government Kenyan government officials for their possible role in supporting RSF in carrying out crimes against humanity and in supporting RSF by providing weapons and even a safe haven for them to create a parallel government. So what happened in Kenya early this year? So the Kenyan government early this year allowed RSF and other militias fighting alongside RSF to create a parallel government known as TASIS, and they created that government. So the Sudanese armed forces complained to the international community against Kenya, and also the Sudanese armed forces filed a case against the United Arab Emirates, that is UAE, in ICJ, and ICJ decided that they don't have any jurisdiction to hear that case, and they threw out that case. So these are the government that are supporting RSF: the UAE, Russia, and also Libya, General Haftar, and China are accused of supporting RSF. And RSF, as you know, have been accused of committing war crimes against the people of Sudan. And the Sudanese armed forces are being supported by US. They're being supported by Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and also Qatar and Turkey. They're providing actually weapons and they're supporting and guiding the Sudanese armed forces. So the US government is said to be investigating top Kenyan officials. And recently, I will say about a month or 2 months ago, a local TV in Kenya known as NTV did an investigative story. And in that investigative story, they were investigating the possibility of Kenya supplying weapons to the RSF. So this is what happened. They actually got hold of videos where the Sudanese armed forces recorded, weapons belonging to Kenya that were taken to RSF. So the Sudanese armed forces pushed out RSF from key strongholds that they were holding, and they ended up, coming across weapons that were supplied to them that were being stored somewhere, and those weapons were clearly labeled the Kenya Defense Forces. So it seems that even Kenya is supporting RSF by providing weapons that are meant for the Kenya Defense Forces. Now, this is what might happen. Kenya might be sanctioned by the US for possibly supporting RSF, and RSF is being sanctioned by the US for crimes against humanity. So why will Kenya be, sanctioned, and how will Kenya sanctioned? So you will remember that last year, when Biden was in office, William Ruto traveled to the United States of America, where he met the president of US, that is Biden, and one of the deals they signed was Kenya, to be added to a list of non-NATO allied countries. And this, comes with benefits. It comes with, military benefits, defense cooperation, security cooperation, and even intelligence sharing cooperation. So Kenya is a very important ally of the US in the war against terror. So Kenya is engaged in a war against terror in Somalia, that is, fighting Al-Shabaab in South Somalia. And also Kenya is engaged in the peace process in DRC. And now Kenya is accused of supporting a militia group that is, causing crimes against humanity in Sudan. So what is happening is this: if Kenya, one of the very important figures in the US, that is one very highly ranking member of the US Senate Foreign Relations Committee, is early May was quoted as saying that they will review the status of the Kenyan government being given being given the ability to be a non-NATO member allied nation. So if they review that, what happens is that Kenya, in terms of defense intelligence sharing and security, it might happen that Kenya will not benefit from that. So the US might remove Kenya from this list, and a lot might happen in Kenya, including sanctioning of top government officials for allowing RSF to establish a parallel government here, and also for allowing RSF to smuggle gold through Kenya, and also allowing or arming the RSF that is accused of crimes against humanity in Sudan. So that is what is happening, and the US government might come out strongly and sanction the government of Kenya for possibly taking part in the Sudanese civil war. So that is that. Cheers.